Children, today we'll start with the explanation of the chapter The Age of Revolutions. In this chapter, we'll study about two revolutions. The first will be the American Revolution and second, the French Revolution. Two revolutions that occurred in the late 18th century introduced ideas of equality, freedom, and democracy to the Western world. The American Revolution was one of the earliest revolutions to take place in the modern world. During this revolution, the Americans rejected colonial rule and chose the path of democracy. In the French Revolution, we can see it was a result of social, religious, and economic injustices that ended the monarchy. Now, regarding American Revolution, we'll see the American War of Independence. The American War of Independence was the world's first organized political upheaval in which 13 British colonies in North America rejected the governance of the Parliament of Great Britain and the British monarchy to become the United States of America. Now we'll see the struggle by the colonies after the discovery of the American continent in the 16th century. By 1733, 13 British colonies were established along the Atlantic coast of North America. Each of these colonies had its own assembly of elected representatives. The settlers in these colonies were independent and resourceful. They were prosperous and had established a flourishing overseas trade. By 1763, Great Britain possessed vast territories in North America. The British, they expected the colonies to contribute towards the defense of their territories. The colonists, in turn, demanded the right of representation in the British Parliament. And the colonists, they took up the slogan, "No taxation without representation." Then, on March 1770, a large mob gathered around a group of British soldiers in Boston. The soldiers fired into the crowd, killing civilians, and this event came to be known as the Boston Massacre. Now, intolerable acts. The British responded to the American protest by passing several punitive laws, which were so harsh that they came to be known as the Intolerable Acts. The laws were aimed at punishing the people of Massachusetts for their actions during the Boston Tea Party. These laws took away the right of the colonists to self-governance and closed the Boston harbor till the East India Company was repaid for its losses. Now we will see what was the Boston Tea Party exactly. So on 16th December 1773, a group of American revolutionaries, they boarded the ship of the English East India Company at the Boston harbor. They dumped 342 chests of tea into the Boston harbor to protest against the tax on tea and the monopoly of the English East India Company. This event came to be known as the Boston Tea Party. Now we come to the beginning of military hostilities. The battles of Lexington and Concord took place in April 1775 when the British sent a force into Concord. They clashed with the colonial militia. Then on 11th June 1776, the representatives of the various colonies appointed a committee to prepare a Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence was drafted and finally adopted on 4th July 1776. The declaration asserted the right of the colonists to free themselves from British rule and to form their own government. The 4th of July had since been celebrated as Independence Day in the United States of America. The Treaty of Paris. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed between the British government and the colonists. The independence of the 13 colonies was recognized, and they were now officially as a new nation called the United States of America. The Declaration of Independence proclaimed that all men who were born equal and hence had equal rights. In 1789, George Washington was unanimously elected as the first President of the United States of America. The American Constitution adopted the Bill of Rights in 1791, which served as the model for various constitutions around the world. Now we come to the French Revolution. The year 1789 witnessed the beginning of the French Revolution, which created both a new political order and new social order in France. This revolution is considered as a major turning point in European political and social history. Now children, the reason for the French Revolution was, if we see to this diagram, we can see here clergies, then the nobility and everyone else. So during the French Revolution, or we can say in the French society, the people were divided into 3 states. It consisted of 3 states. First, the clergies, second, the nobility, and third was the middle class, or we can say everyone, including peasants, artisans, doctors, teachers, etc. The first 2 states in the French society, they enjoyed the privileges, all the privileges like the sole right to command army regiments and hold leading positions in government, exemption from direct taxation, the privilege of opposing the king's decision to tax land owners. But all the taxes were taken from the middle class, or we can see according to the diagram, everyone else. This everyone else, which included merchants, peasants, other professions, they were paying all the taxes in the French society, but they were not getting any of the privileges. And the 2 sections, nobility and clergy, they were not paying any of the taxes, but they were getting all the privileges. So basically this was the main cause of the French Revolution. Now we will see in this, during the time of the French Revolution, what role did the philosophers played. So the main philosophers were Montesquieu, Voltaire and Rousseau. They played a major role in the French Revolution. They inspired the people by their ideas, and they inspired the middle class with the ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity, and which became the slogan of the French Revolution later on. Now we will see what were the causes. As I already told you, the first cause was all the taxes were being paid by the third class, everyone else, or we can say middle class, without any privileges. Beside that, there were many other causes like collapse of government finances. The immediate cause was the collapse of government finances, bad harvest and a slow down manufacturing led to the food shortage, rising prices for food and unemployment. Then King Louis XVI and his queen Marie Antoinette led very extravagant lives, which put a strain on the royal treasury. Third, the king enjoyed absolute power and his word was the law. He was not answerable to the people. And fourth was the administration was corrupt and inefficient officials were not worried about the welfare of the people. They were just worried about their own benefits or to fill their own pockets. Now we will see events of the French Revolution. So basically it includes 4 events. First, tennis court oath. In June 1769, the third state voted to form the National Assembly. Members of the third state, they gathered in the tennis court building at Versailles and signed an oath to form a new constitution and national government, representing all the people of the country. This was known as the famous tennis court oath. Second, we come to the storming of Bastille. On 14th July 1789, the French crowd they moved towards the Bastille. Bastille, a symbol of French autocracy, was used as a political prison. The angry mob entered the Bastille and released the prisoners. Then third, we come to the Declaration of Rights of the Man. In September 1789, the National Assembly took over the control of France. At this time, the famous Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen was adopted. A new constitution was also drafted by 1791. Now, fourth, we come to the destruction of the old regime. In 1792, the newly elected National Convention abolished the monarchy and announced the establishment of the French Republic. The king was placed on trial, found guilty, and sentenced to death. In 1793, Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette were guillotined in Paris. Guillotine was a device which was used to behead the people, which you can see here in the picture. And the name guillotine was given to it because it was invented by Dr. Guillotine at that time. Now we see what were the results of the French Revolution. So there were basically 5 results. First, we come to end of absolute monarchy. The French Revolution marked the end of the absolute monarchy and republic was established in France. Secondly, liberty, equality and fraternity became the guiding principles of the French Republic. Third, a democratic government was established where people could take part in the making of laws. Fourth, it popularized the idea of nationalism. New reforms were introduced for the welfare of the people and their conditions improved. And fifth, the revolution led to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte as the Emperor of France. Now we see the influence of the French Revolution. So the success of the French Revolution inspired people in other European countries. They rose in revolt to overthrow the tyrannical autocratic rulers and establish new political and social systems based on the principles of liberty, equality and fraternity. Democracy became a new form of government. Mass movements all over the world were inspired by the French Revolution and people imbibed the spirit of nationalism. Now at last we come to Napoleon Bonaparte. So Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 on the Mediterranean island of Corsica. In 1785, Napoleon was commissioned as lieutenant in the French army. He won the confidence of his people and seniors with his energy and ability to make quick decisions. He rose through the rank of the French army. In the first decade of the 19th century, the French army under Napoleon's command engaged in a series of conflicts known as the Napoleonic Wars. These campaigns targeted every major European power. In 1805, Napoleon defeated the combined forces of Austria and Russia at the Battle of Austerlitz. In 1806, Prussia, and in 1807, Russia was defeated by Napoleon. By 1810, Napoleon had unified and dominated most of the Europe. In 1813, major European powers, namely Britain, Austria and Prussia, they formed a coalition and defeated Napoleon's forces at Leipzig. The following year, the coalition invaded France, defeated Napoleon and exiled him to the island known as Elba. Later than a year, Napoleon escaped from Elba and gathered a small army, but he was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Napoleon spent the last 6 years of his life under British supervision on the island of St. Helena, and finally in 1821 he died. So, in this chapter, children, we saw the two revolutions, the American Revolution and the French Revolution. How did American Revolution started? What were the causes? What was the intolerable acts? The famous Boston Tea Party, what was it? And regarding French Revolution, why did the French Revolution started? What were the reasons behind it? How the society or the states were divided during the French time? Who were the philosophers who inspired the French Revolution? What were the causes? What all four events were there for the French Revolution? And what were the results of the French Revolution? And how did Napoleon Bonaparte, he became the emperor, and finally how he died. So this is it in this chapter. Thank you.